My name is Carol Peters, and I am proud to serve as the President and CEO of United Way Next. We are grateful to the 171 people who have registered for today's session. And for those of you who are listening in after the fact, we're sorry you didn't make it, but we're grateful that you're taking the time to listen in. I'm looking around my screen and see a lot of familiar faces, many of you who have participated in our previous roundtables centered around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And without further ado, today I'm going to turn it over to our host, Bill Mills, United Way Next member and part of our DEIB subgroup focused on this programming. So thank you, Bill, for hosting, and take it away.
Okay. Thanks to you, Carol, and welcome to all of you to this second roundtable that we are sponsoring. And the focus, of course, is on belonging. This roundtable is actually presented by the DEIB program subgroup. And Mary Tyler of our board is chair of that particular group. Mary Tyler, Dayton, Ohio. Because of the large number of participants, as Carol indicated, I would like for each of you to use the chat box to introduce yourself again by putting your name, and I see many of you are doing that. Those of you who are coming online now, just simply introduce yourself, put your name, organization, and city in the chat box. And this will be a continuing process, hopefully, as people are coming on. Let me start by first acknowledging our United Way Next staff and President and CEO, Carol, who does a tremendous job in leading this organization. And of course, I want to acknowledge Caitlin Guess, who behind the scenes really provides all of the technical support we need to make sure that these programs are successful. I would like to also pause and acknowledge a few other people. First, Ed Rivera, the board chair of United Way Next. He's retired CEO, United Way of Albuquerque. Also, the co-chairs of the DEIB work group of the board. David Nicole, past president and CEO, Fort Wayne, Indiana, as well as Deborah Zalaga, retired president and CEO, United Way in El Paso, Texas. Again, to each of you, I extend a big thank you. As Carol pointed out, I'm Bill Mills. I retired about 13 years ago from United Way Worldwide. I live in Alexandria, Virginia. I served while I was at United Way Worldwide as the VP for Talent Management and also head of executive search. Before United Way Worldwide, though, I did work with two local United Ways, Detroit and Atlanta. I'm a former member of United Way Next board and currently serve on the DEIB program subgroup. You know, one of the things we like to always do is start our sessions off by lifting up United Way Next's commitment statement to DEIB. Could you provide us with that slide, Caitlin? I'm not going to read this verbatim. I'm just going to simply go over a few important points. The end game of this statement at the very beginning, by taking very specific actions, we are really assuring that the organization has enhanced capability as it relates to belonging. The statement covers a whole range of specific actions needed on the part of our board, committees, our members, to enhance this end of continuing to improve belonging and valuing. The roundtable, of course, will help each of us enhance in some way our skills in that area. Now, I would like to lift up the title of today's roundtable, which is Belonging, the game-winning strategy for personal and professional growth. Key words in the session's title emphasize that it will cover strategies to enhance belonging, whether we are current staff United Way alumni, or retirees who volunteer, this session will help each of us to increase our feelings of belonging, which our speaker will really get into in considerable detail. We are fortunate to have as our speaker today on belonging Jason Daniels. Currently, Jason and his wife operate a consulting practice known as J-Ramon Limited. Jason is president and CEO of their consulting firm. Their firm's practice really involves collaborating with corporate, civic, social sector, and nonprofit organizations, helping them to create strategic solutions, to build leadership effectiveness, to scale impact, and to really grow partnerships and advance overall organizational effectiveness. But I want to point out that Jason also brings with him a wealth of United Way experience, having served in roles, executive roles in Toledo, Ohio, and also Cleveland. He has also served on a number of United Way worldwide task forces, contributing his expertise in areas such as community impact, strategy and innovation, strategic partnerships, talent, volunteer engagement, and of course, diversity and inclusion. But not involved in work, Jason let me know that he enjoys traveling and spending quality time with his wife, his daughter, Elise, as well as their dog, Coco. With that as a brief background, I am so pleased to present our speaker for today, Jason Daniels. Jason?
Well, good afternoon to each and every one of you today. I'm really happy to be here. Yeah, I saw Ann, I'll do that too,
Yeah.
because it's wonderful whenever we get the opportunity to really just all be together in the same room. There's always this funny moment where you have to share your screen, and in doing so, you're always hopeful that it shows up on the screen. So let me stop subtitles and let me do one more thing. Okay, I see a thumbs up from Caitlin. Caitlin is with United Way Next, and she's just been a jewel in helping to get everything set up for all of you today. So again, I'm just so happy to be here for sure. I do have a few acknowledgments that I would just like to mention. Thank you again to Carol and to Caitlin, United Way Next. Thank you so much for your leadership, and to all the members of the Diversity Committee. I had the wonderful opportunity to reconnect with Bill Mills. We're on Facebook together. We have been since he retired, but it was great to chat with you in preparation for today. To Mary Tyler, you are a duo. You are an incredible person. And one of the things that I want to say is not only your work in consulting, but also the work that you continue to do in Dayton. I look forward to being in Dayton and spending some time with you here pretty soon. To all the United Way friends and legends who've joined the call or serve or have served for United Way, or maybe even be retired, I'd just like to say I acknowledge you and I see you. Big thanks to Darlene Slaughter, who I think will be joining here pretty soon. To Janet Jackson, not the Rhythm Nation Janet Jackson, but the judge, Janet Jackson, formerly of the United Way of Central Ohio. I just want to shout out to her. I don't think she's on the call today, but she's a dear friend and a mentor. And one of those mentors that when they call and ask you, how are you doing, you start to sweat a little bit. And I think that's the mark of a really good mentor for sure. To people like Debbie Foster and Marvine Hart, who, if it weren't for them in my early United Way days, having the opportunity to learn about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I probably would not have as much knowledge as I have today. So if you hear from them, let them know that I said hello. To Eric Glazer and to Eric McDowell, I thank you so much for your leadership over the years, both in terms of strategy, and Eric McDowell and his work driving and leading at that time, the Diversity Committee with United Way Worldwide. And to Dr. Janetta B. Cole, who has just been a wonderful trailblazer in the work of diversity. I've had the opportunity to be at conferences with her, both at United Way as well as in my profession or my consulting business, and I'm really appreciative of her leadership. And to Bill Kitson, who is on the call, my former boss in 2 different cities, thank you for your leadership. I always publicly acknowledge him, because without him and his leadership and foresight, I would not have had the wonderful United Way experience that I've had. So thank you to your leadership. My business focuses in the area of leadership development and organizational strategy and change. A lot of our work we do with CEOs and specifically C-suite leaders, while we work with managers and assistants and secretaries. A lot of our work crosses or spans clients from both the corporate, nonprofit, government, higher education systems. We work with park systems, museums, and science centers around the country. And so, as you can see here, we've done a lot of work. Some of this work looks very familiar to the type of work that you all get the opportunity to do if you're working for United Way as well. I think the secret sauce to our work at J. Rahman is really just our ability to listen and to hear what our clients want and to deliver on that promise. In 2017, we created the Lift Midwest Conference focused on African American professionals and allies. And one of the things my wife and I noticed is that we did not see a lot of diverse representation in executive roles. And so we started to partner with other companies who we also knew were supportive and allies. And all this was pre-George Floyd. And we had 3 years of successful conferences. And then over time, we took those effective dialogues and those stakeholder convenings, and we moved them into a lot of our companies hosting Lyft-related types of conversations where we create safe spaces around diversity, equity, and inclusion, but also doing that same type of thing when it comes to strategy and change management as well. And so we've had a joy. This is just some of the pictures and a lot of our sponsors over the years, some of them national, some of them local, you can probably see here, but there's more information on our website as well. This is my wife, Kelly. This is her personality. Anyone who's met her or you know her, this is who she is. And this is actually her many years before our daughter was born, 12 years ago. This was her in Ukraine. Her personality is wonderful, but let me tell you something. She is a fierce business leader. And her background and work and advocacy in the area of not only human trafficking, but working with high-achieving students in her previous roles. She serves as the second in charge. I like to really say the first in charge with our company, but she's just a delight and she's wonderful. And I love how the guy in the picture is looking at her like, if you don't get on this van and get moving, but that's Kelly for you for sure. This is my wife. This is my daughter, Elise. She's 12 years old, and this is our wonderful pet, Coco. They are 2 partners in crime for sure. And if anyone would have told me how much, look, I don't have very much hair. This dog has to get a haircut every month. And if I had known that, I'm not sure that I would have selected this dog, but both of them are a joy. We like to consider them our chief creative and canine officers for J. Rahman. This is us just hanging out, probably once, I think this is an Easter Sunday photo, hanging out at Starbucks. Anybody who knows me knows that I am a big fan of Starbucks. We've been wonderful ambassadors for Starbucks for many years. So I have my coffee and I have my water ready for today. I wrote a book about 13 years ago, actually. It's called Get Off the Gerbil Wheel, a remarkable way to stop running and going nowhere in life. If you've ever caught yourself pondering, surely life has more to offer, then I'd say it's time to take a look at this book. You can get it on our website at jrahman.com. It's an insightful guide. It's a quick read. It's 92 pages. It's 9 great chapters that really help us push through societal norms when we may feel pigeonholed, either at work or professionally. And I would say whether you are in the corporate setting or you're a stay-at-home mom or dad or caregiver, this book is really a blueprint for breaking free from really the endless cycle of monotony and stepping into a realm of endless possibilities. Thank you again to all of you who are here. Your commitment to growth today, and I think also you're probably wanting or need to want to know, how do I create more inclusive spaces in the workplace and embrace diversity as you look to either implement or continue the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion in your workplaces or community. Thank you for that, and thank you for always being willing to drive change. I will tell you that weird things happen from time to time. I know that we're on virtual. We spent many years during COVID doing this. There are times I made sure that everything was plugged in. I want you to do the same and make sure all your batteries are where they need to be, because I don't want you to have to miss any of this presentation today. But weird things happen. If you hear the dog bark, look, I'm at home. Some of you are remote or at home or vacationing. Things happen, and that's okay. We'll have a little agility here. We'll bounce back. I think we've done all the checking that we need to make sure we have a successful time together. If you have any aha moments today, put them in the chat or write them down. We're using the chat as a guide today. I will tell you, I specifically stripped a lot of the ways in which I would normally engage a virtual audience because it is so important to make sure that we have time for dialogue and to talk. So often we're on these types of calls, we get into a breakout room, a lot of the time ends up being used, and then we get to the end and we have just enough time for 1 or 2 questions, but I don't want to do that today. So we curated this specifically for not me to be a talking head, but for me to share a number of insights with you so that we have adequate time at the end for you to join in that conversation, ask questions if you like. But if you have any aha moments, put them in the chat. Again, this is just the gift to you, that intentionality around our time today. It's a gift for you. And so we want to learn together and we want to learn from one another. Now, I know that we're all on mute, but one of the things that I think would be so amazing is I'm going to engage you in a different way. If we were at a conference or if I was facilitating live, we would all have the opportunity for not only you to learn about me as you just did, but for me to learn about you. So on the count of 3, I want to know everyone's name. Now, I know I can't hear you, but some of your coworkers might think you're a little odd shouting out your name, but I have a few questions for you. I see a few people laughing. So I just want you to answer. Some people whisper it, some people shout it. It's all good. On the count of 3, I want to know, what is your first name? So 1, 2, 3.
Peggy.
Brianna.
All right.
Angie.
That's also a test.
Yeah.
I love that people took themselves off of mute. So that's great. Make sure you go back on mute. Okay. Another thing I want to know is what is your favorite food? What's your favorite food? So just shout that out. I have magic ears as a facilitator. I can hear you like Santa, no matter where you are in the world. So what's your favorite food on the count of 3? 1, 2, and 3.
Mexican.
Seafood.
One of the best things I just heard was all of it. So whoever said that, yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Thank you so much for that. I feel like now I know everybody's name and I know what everybody's favorite food is. So that's going to be a great thing as we continue to move forward. Many of you, when you saw that there was going to be a talk on belonging, diversity, equity, and inclusion, your boss came to you and said to you, hey, I want you to join in on this particular call. Some of you looked like this, like these 2 cats, like what? Not another webinar, not another seminar, not another topic that is sometimes frustrating for me and frustrating for my coworkers. And if any of you are currently serving in a space where you are leading initiatives focused on diverse stakeholders, diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, or belonging, we all know we can get a little fatigued sometimes, but my goal today is hopefully to share something new, something innovative with you so that you don't have to look like this the next time someone brings up this topic. For today, we're going to do 3 things. We're going to examine what it means to have a sense of belonging and how it can affect an organization. We're going to consider the key components needed to develop a sense of belonging. And we're going to outline ways, I'm going to outline ways that you can foster an environment that is conducive to creating a sense of belonging at work and in community. Now, we all have to have ground rules. I actually like to run my virtual sessions just like I was standing in front of you. And I will tell you, all of you who had the opportunity to meet Michael Wilkinson knows that he believes you have all of your meetings starting with meeting rights. And so for all of you who know, yep, I'm going to make you remember. One of the things that Mark O'Connell taught us is if you want to have a masterful meeting, you have to have meeting rights. Well, since I went through the program, I just adopted all 10 of these. I think it is so important in any meeting for us to have respected voice. That is your ability to have the right to participate and to be heard, and for your voice to be respected regardless of your opinion or opposing viewpoints. Yep, you got your meeting notice. We're going to get the right information today. We're going over our ground rules. Yes, we had a timely start. Thanks, Carol. Thanks, Caitlin. Thanks, Bill, for that. We're going to have focused discussion when I get through all of my presentation. You'll have lots of opportunity for input. And then the meeting recap is really just the opportunity that this training, this webinar will be virtual. So you'll have the opportunity to review it when you want to. We'll make sure that we end on time. But the last thing I want to say is number 10 is that we are all professionals and we are going to exercise decorum. That means that you have the right to exercise all of these meeting rights without the fear of bullying, rudeness, verbal aggression, or degrading comments. I like to say that we're all professionals, so let's govern ourselves accordingly. The one thing I want you to remember of these 3 is that done is better than perfect. We're trying to get it done. We're not trying to be perfect. I'm not trying to be perfect today. Something might happen with a screen or whatever. I've got lots of backups around me. But at the end of the day, we're trying to learn more about this diversity, equity, inclusion, but specifically belonging. All of us will be at a different point in the journey. And remember that curiosity is your best friend. Today is not going to be a gripe session for us. It's not a time for us to share grievances when we get into the dialogue part. And it's not a session to develop strategies. We're not creating any strategies here today. And it's also not an opportunity for you to call out your peers or your leadership in any way, shape, or form. So I just want us to all be on the same page as we move forward. Intensive learning, let's bring it on. It's so important for you to know. I have a lot of slides. There's 88 slides. A lot of it is just visual for you, but there are some slides that I will move past a little quickly, and it's only because you're going to get this and you can read through those things on your own. So let's make sure we are supremely awake. So call and response is something you've done many, many times, and it has its earliest roots in the participatory music rituals of sub-Saharan Africa, where music is played and it serves as a role in nearly every major social function, from religious ceremonies to civic gatherings. Now, you don't have to take your computer off of mute if you don't want to, but to make sure that we're awake before I get into this presentation, here's where we are. Call and response. I'm going to read the call line, and your job is to read the response line. So we're going to start here. So let me make sure I can see some of your faces. Here we go. All right. So macaroni and cheese.
Everybody
Everybody
Hocus pocus.
Everybody
focus.
Banana split.
I know
I know how to
sit.
Wax on.
Wax off.
May the force.
Be with you.
E.T.
Phone home.
Hakuna.
Matata.
What a wonderful praise. I know we all want to sing it, but we don't have time. Stop.
It's hammer
time.
Goodness gracious.
Grip
all the
fire.
Let's see if I can do this. Wake me up before
Before
you go. There you go. There you go. And if you have a problem,
I'll solve it.
yeah, okay. So I think we're all awake this afternoon. We all have our coffee. Now, if you were from Ohio, the call and response will be, I would say OH, and some of you would say, this is my friend Rodney Eason, IO. Now, if you are a Michigan person, you would say go blue. That's right. You would say go blue. So just wanted to make sure that we're all awake. Okay, so let's get into things right now. So what does your diversity, equity, and inclusion vineyard look like? So if I were to ask you, tell me what you see, many of you would say, oh, I see grapes, I see a cluster, I see what looks to be a vine, maybe I see a leaf. Some of you, I would say, what's the opportunity if you have a vineyard? And many of you would say, oh, if I had a vineyard, I could make preserves, I could make grape jelly. Some of you, although it's not quite 5 o'clock, some would start to talk about they can make wine, and you talk about the types of wines you can make. And that is true. One of the things we know about a vineyard is that a vineyard has to be taken care of. If you had the opportunity to have a vineyard, and sometimes when I'm teaching leadership, I say, what does your leadership vineyard look like? But for the purpose of today, I'd say, what does your DEI vineyard look like? A vineyard has to be cultivated. There is an expert who takes care of or chiefly governs a vineyard, and it's called a viticulturist. They are experts at growing grapes. And if I were to decide to say, hey, I want you to come to my house. I want you to come to my vineyard. And you showed up, you pulled up, and the vineyard looked like this, well manicured, a beautiful home. You'd say, wow, that's a beautiful vineyard. Some of your DEI vineyards look just like this, well manicured. You've been doing this for a while. It's great. But some of your vineyards may look like this. Maybe the foundation is starting to fall in. You started it, it's not going well. You've had fits and starts and stops. Sometimes maybe the work that you've been doing in the area of diversity, equity, inclusion has been going well. And now all of a sudden, especially in the last few years, what you were able to stand on and build as a foundation before, it's starting to crumble and you don't know what to do. Or your vineyard looks like this. It's beautiful. Look at this house. But guess what? Some of the windows are off. There might be leaks because the roof is at a weird angle. Water is running off in certain portions. And so sometimes your DEI vineyard can look like this. And in others, You don't know, and your coworkers don't know. You have a DEI initiative, you have a DEI strategy, but your people don't know which house they're going into on each day. Sometimes the DEI house looks like it's made of straw, sticks, or bricks. People don't know which door to walk through. They don't know which house is the right house. What part of the diversity, equity, inclusion work should I be driving? Some people say that they're confused, and others are running from the fear of saying the wrong thing. People say, I don't want to get involved in the diversity because I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to offend someone. And they're paralyzed. And so I want to help you with what I think is the byproduct of a really good diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy, and that's belonging. Oftentimes there's ambiguity and a lack of clarity, and ambiguity in implementing and sustaining. It's not one thing. You don't want to just implement your diversity work. You want it to be sustainable. It should be a core part of your business. Why is there so much ambiguity in this space? Well, there's a term called ambiguity tolerance, and it refers to an individual's capacity to navigate and tolerate uncertain or unclear situations without experiencing undue stress or discomfort. And some of us are in that place. We got into this well-meaning in our organizations. We serve as a belonging or chief diversity officer. And then as we've gotten into it, there's so much change that's needed. Some of us feel like there's a lot of convincing that's needed. And so the reality is we need to make sure we're confronting this approach in a really good way. And I think the way we start is making sure that we're all on the same page, because there are so many terms associated with diversity, for sure. Diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, belonging, intersectionality, implicit bias. You've been through the trainings, microaggressions happening at work, allyship. Am I an ally? Am I not? Then you get into social justice. Some people say it's not enough to do diversity. It's about justice. Other people say there's the stereotype threat that's happening in organizations. There's representation. That's the new word that people are starting to learn more about. You have identity politics and how that plays a role. So there's so many different phrases in the diversity space that sometimes we need to pay attention to. But the one thing I will tell you is that for today, I just want to say, when we talk about diversity, here's the thing that I want to say to you. The range of human differences, including but not limited to race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, age, religion, disability, and socioeconomic status would be the definition for diversity. And again, a lot of these slides are here because you're going to get these and then you'll have a reference point. Equity is about the fairness and impartiality in treatment, access to opportunities, and advancement for all individuals, regardless of their backgrounds. And then inclusion, creating environments where all individuals feel valued, respected, and supported, and where their perspectives and contributions are embraced. But belonging is about feeling a sense of acceptance, connection, and inclusion within a community or organization where individuals can be their authentic selves. How many times have we answered the survey in either our volunteer work as retirees or as employees in the workplace? Can I bring my whole self to work? And so many of us answer the question, no, I cannot. That's because I think in some instances, we're really missing what that sense of acceptance and connection and inclusion is at work. How do we do that? How do we do that at work? We understand that as a country, we're facing a mental health crisis, and our workplaces are overwhelmed with employees who are grappling with these changes. From our assessment surveys at J. Rahman, when we work with companies, we've seen over the last 6 to 9 months an overwhelming number of employees who have self-disclosed by way of either a survey or just walking up to us when we're working with them or doing a training, especially on the DEI piece, where it's coming up that they're finding it difficult to perform at work due to their mental health issues. The impact of COVID-19 has significantly exacerbated this situation. Many of us have not had the opportunity to mourn our losses. I say this every time I'm in front of an audience. COVID happened, and then we like to say it was over. We all went back to work at the end of the day. And guess what? With going back to work, one of the things that we had to do is we just kind of had to tuck it all away and move on. And now what we're seeing is we are struggling as leaders in the workplace. We don't really know who to tell because there's this expectation that we're just supposed to push past it. And I'm telling you, I think that belonging is one of the keys to how we move through some of our individual mental health crisis at work, along with the other supportive therapies and workplace supports as well. But I think it's a big game changer. We need to be aware of this belonging as maybe a big support. Many companies and leaders at the highest levels are creating what I call a bake sale syndrome, where when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. This term refers to the superficial, you've heard it, performative acts taken to address DEI, much like organizing a bake sale for charity, right? You're looking to do this without addressing the root causes of the inequality at work, right? And while well-intentioned, these efforts often fail to create meaningful, lasting change. Instead of embedding DEI into the core values and operations of the organization, organizations are treating DEI and belonging and accessibility as a side initiative or a check the box or a tick off. And I think we have moved beyond that. Employees are smart. Our younger generation in the workforce are looking for authenticity when it comes to diversity and especially creating inclusion at work. So we don't want to create a bake sale syndrome. We want to make sure that we are creating strategies that last. And I know for some of you, you can say, well, the flurry of activity is the one thing that was needed to get us on the right track. And that's true. But we can't keep just running around the office, selling baked goods that aren't going to stick. We really need to make sure that this diversity work is important for us. Some of you have probably seen this slide, but especially for the United Way folks, even our retirees, we need to make sure attitude and behavior are the two things that are necessary if we're looking to do something different. And as we change our attitude and behavior, outcomes, right? All my outcome measurement people are like, yeah, that's what we want to measure. Can you change your attitude when it comes to thinking about this diversity, equity, inclusion work? Can you change your behavior so that we have a solution and move toward actions, better results, and greater performance? So let's get into it. Where do we look for a sense of belonging? People want to connect with the people they work with. In a survey by Harvard Business Review, 62% of people said that they want to connect with the people at home. But guess what? That second highest number, 34% of people in the Harvard Business Review survey said, 34% said that they want to have meaningful connections with the people that they work with, right? And then for even some of our retirees, community is also important. You may not be at work, but community at 20% and in places of worship at 17%. 40% of individuals in this Harvard Business Review survey said that they felt physically and emotionally isolated in the workplace. 40%, 4 out of 10 people. Look around at your cubicle. If 20, 30 people there, count off 1, 2, 3. Every fourth person said they're feeling physically and emotionally isolated at work. They feel surrounded and overwhelmed. And so I think these stats are a good jumping off point for us. My friend, Dr. Sidney Childs, came up with this statement that he heard at another conference, and I've borrowed it and I use it all the time. And it says, can we say the quiet thing out loud? Can we say the quiet thing out loud? And sometimes we'd like to talk about the elephant in the room. I don't think there's one elephant. I think there's a few baby elephants running around the room. So at this time, while I'm still presenting, I want you to go to the chat function. I want you to answer the question in a sentence statement, just a sentence, not a big sentence, but just a sentence about what's the quiet thing that needs to be said out loud about diversity, equity, and inclusion. What do we need to be saying? How do we, even in our dialogue today, what can we put in the chat that we can reflect on, that we can say, you know what, this is that quiet thing that I've been trying to say to my coworkers, to my boss, to the people in my retiree group, the place where I volunteer in community. This is the quiet thing that I feel like if we don't talk about this topic or don't bring this up, then we're just moving on without really dealing with the elephants in the room, right? I'll continue on, but you type your statements, because when we get to the question and answer segment of today, this may be a good point using these statements or these questions for some of you to begin our conversations. The effects of loneliness. Whoever thought that we'd be talking about loneliness at work, but it has a devastating impact on employees and our organizational culture. And bottom line, it's impacting our workplace engagement numbers, retention strategies. It's disrupting revenue and fundraising. It's a bear when it comes to how it impacts employee morale and team building. Loneliness. We're talking about now loneliness at work. The prolonged issues of loneliness can lead to diminished productivity, physical and emotional stress, withdrawal from teams, increased absences at work, and weaker team performance. It also reduces innovation and impairs decision making. So loneliness at work is a problem. We're seeing it in our data time and time again. People are lonely at work. People are isolated. That visual of the person standing, walled off by a brick wall. In another Harvard Business Review survey, 58% of those reported having mental health issues based on consequences of isolation at work. 22% of adults said they always or often feel lonely or isolated. 33% of people said it affected their ability to do their job. And 55% of those reported having physical issues as a result of isolation, the consequences of isolation. And 49% said it affected their personal relationships. So humans have an innate need to belong to one another, to our friends and our families, and to our culture and our community. The same is true when we're at work. When people feel like they belong at work, they are more productive, motivated, and engaged, and 3.5 times more likely to contribute to their fullest potential, according to this Harvard Business Review research at the Center for Talent and Innovation. 3.5 times more likely to contribute to their fullest potential. All of us, including Oprah, have been talking about how do we get to our fullest potential. We have surveys. People win awards for being the best place to work. And can you imagine if you were driving belonging, as we're going to talk about in a second, moving people from isolation to team, not walling off our employees and our people, because sometimes it's not what they're going through personally. We intentionally, as leaders and organizations, if I put on my leadership development hat, and we can all be found guilty of being partial to people, not ensuring that we're making everyone feel included or belong. So these stats are real. 3.5 times more likely to contribute to their fullest potential, right? That's something to keep in mind. The sense of belonging is defined as or framed as a basic human need and motivation sufficient to influence. For all of my United Way colleagues who you're either working there or you're retired, one of the things that you know from a United Way perspective, it is about basic needs. And the basic human need is that we all have a sense of belonging. Some would say that it's too much for a workplace, but what we saw earlier is that the second highest ranking in that earlier survey, besides home, was work at 34% of people feeling like the need to belong. That's where they want to belong. So yes, workplaces must find solutions to not only engage, but create a sense of belonging for their employees. So let's get into the core elements or the sense of belonging. Mattering. You've probably like, mattering, is that real? Is that a real term? It's a real term. I've looked it up. It's a real term. The concept of mattering refers to the feeling or perception that one person is significant, valued, and important to others. It encompasses the sense that one's presence, their actions, and their contributions are recognized, appreciated, and make a difference in the lives of others or within a particular context, such as a community, organization, or relationship. So mattering is one of the terms. You should start borrowing it. And you should post this up on your cubicles and in your hallways at your offices or maybe at your virtual office. And you should be thinking about, how can I help someone feel significant? How can I help someone feel valued? And can we move our recognition, can we move our recognition programs beyond happening every 6 months or 1 year? How do we look at a person in the eye and recognize them for just the work that they did on that day? We need to be focusing on mattering, right? We need to be really paying attention to how do we make sure that people matter in the workplace. Satisfying the need for belonging significantly impacts the culture and mission of organizations. And when employees feel a sense of belonging, it fosters a positive and inclusive workplace culture, like increased engagement, collaboration, productivity. As individuals are more motivated to contribute to the organization's goals, these are the things that we cite to see. So for all of us who are working and are in business or we're retired, but we're lending our time to volunteer for organizations, Revenue matters. Increasing employee engagement matters. Collaboration and team building and solving issues at work and productivity, it all matters. The business case for prioritizing belonging is very clear. It creates a thriving work environment that supports both personal fulfillment and organizational success. I had to eat my words because many years ago, and some of you recognized that when the millennials were coming, we were reading all of these reports about how millennials wanted to have a job where they not only were at work, but they also could do personal things in the middle of the day. And we said, oh, they're spoiled and they just want what they want. And what we now know is the very talent or gift or the way that millennials were made up and how they showed up in the workplace is now the very thing that it's part of the secret sauce. It's a part of the ingredients to this cake that we need to adopt those same ways and of thinking and strategy and employ them literally in our tactics and strategies at work, because it is important that if we're going to create a thriving work environment, that those supports are both personal and professional, personal and workplace mixed together in some way, shape, or form. And that is why we see organizations like OI in my background right down the street, where it's just an empty building. Why? Because we learned that through COVID, maybe working remote is better for people. We're starting to see trends and workplace studies now where individuals who are at work are outperforming because they're at home, maybe in their pajamas. I don't care, as long as you get your work done, right? We're starting to see that. So they're starting to have positive outcomes. I just want to say here that the number one reason people quit their jobs is not because of money or benefits, it's because of their managers. And levels of engagement, you've seen this Franklin Covey chart before. The dotted line on the screen is where you want your people to be. You want people to be at willing cooperation, but so many people at work are rebellious or they quit. High turnover rates we're seeing. They're resentful. Sometimes there's resentful obedience. Their compliance, they're kind of wishy-washy at work. And some of that is because we're not employing belonging strategies at work to make people feel like they are heard and valued. They're jumping ship because as managers and leaders, we are not doing the things that help them stay connected to their role and to their workplace. Belonging is also good for business. And the same HBR study, one of the things was 50% increase in job performance. Look at this, a 50% drop in turnover risk. For all of our HR people on the call, I know this is what you're looking for. You want to know, how can I keep people longer? How can I keep good talent longer? Because right now, this job market, people will work for you for 3 or 4 months. If they don't feel like they matter, they don't feel like they belong, they don't care about your strategies and your mission, they're out of there. Last one is 167% increase in an employee's willingness to recommend a company or organization. So for all of you who are either job searching or you're in the HR field, this is your answer to having better Indeed scores. Because when people leave an organization, just like shopping, they're going to tell everyone about their experience. You want to know why maybe people aren't coming there? Well, it's probably because you don't have a strong sense of belonging. Your mission statement and your vision statement, those are visionary statements, but principles that you have to live up to. You've got to model the behavior, and it's good for business. So as we get to the end of this, creating a sense of belonging is really important. Psychological safety is one of the terms that's been around for many, many years. So for an individual, psychological safety is defined as the belief that you won't be punished or humiliated for sharing ideas, concerns, mistakes, and asking questions. If I put on my leadership hat and we're teaching a leadership class, I have a whole slide that I think I took out of here, and it talks about, here are all the things that people don't want to see you do at work. When someone is presenting, they don't want to see you rolling your eyes, huffing and puffing, not showing up to meetings on time so that you can voice your invisible concern of, I don't want to be here. As managers, as leaders in an organization, as secretaries, if you are working or employed for somewhere, there is a level of professionalism that we all need to be giving individually. People don't want to be humiliated. If you don't like somebody's comments, or you don't like someone's presentation, there's a way to professionally say it. But we shouldn't be humiliating people at work for the sharing of their ideas, providing their feedback, the very thing we say we want that makes the workplace tick, and for people to feel like they belong. We're doing the actual opposite of that. from a group perspective, a shared belief held by members of a team that others on the team will not embarrass, reject, or punish someone for speaking up. So somebody's got to be responsible at work for creating this psychologically safe environment. And especially if you're a manager, when you see people being attacked at work, attacked at their cube for the sharing of their ideas or whatever, somebody's got to put a stop to that. That is one of the reasons that workplaces are eroding. It is because we are allowing, in some instances, my word, this foolishness to happen at work. We are professionals and we need to get back to creating psychologically safe environments. There are 4 stages to psychological safety. Inclusion safety satisfies the basic human need to connect and belong. That's stage 1. Start there. You don't have to get to stage 2, stage 3, get there fast. Just start there. Can you create an environment? Can you lead in a space where you can make sure that everybody feels like they are connected and belong in your team meetings, in your staff meetings, when you have your all staff meetings? These things are so important. Then you have learner safety, satisfying the need to learn and grow, contributor safety, satisfying the need to make a difference, and then challenger safety, satisfying the need to make things better. So how do you create psychological safety? I'm not going to read all these are for you, but these are points for you to reflect on that you can self-correct for yourself and say, what are the things I'm going to stop doing, start doing, or keep doing? Are my actions, for those of you who are on this call, are my actions lining up with how I can create a strong sense of belonging for my employees and myself, right? How you show up for your team, how you engage your team. Are you really open to feedback, or are you just saying that you want it? Sometimes when we go into organizations, they say, we have a feedback system. I say, show it to me. They'll have an intranet. People will put something in an email box and send it off, or they'll have a physical way with a pen and paper up on the wall. You can write your comments. When I ask them to go into those means of feedback, sometimes pulling those things off the wall, or let me go into your intranet email portal and let me look. There are sometimes hundreds and hundreds of feedback data that's there that no one has looked at in months. In months, we ask for feedback from our people, but we don't do anything with it. And guess what? Your people are smart. They know you're not doing anything with it. So because you're not answering those emails or responding in a way that makes sense or creating a sense of belonging, they're not going to keep answering those questions. We've got to get to a place where we're making sure that we're listening to our people. There's something called the power of a check-in. Checking in with people is so important. Employees feel the greatest sense of belonging when their colleagues check in with them personally and professionally. And a check-in is not a one-on-one. If I was teaching about an effective one-on-one, it would be that a check-in is something quick, not just how was your day. Ask them specific things about what they do personally and professionally. Ask them about the report that's due on Tuesday and if they need your help to get it done, but also ask them about their child's ballet practice. We need to get in the habit of it's not just about work. We need to be authentically checking in with people. 39% of colleagues checked in with their people personally and professionally, according to a survey. That means we've got lots of room for growth here. And let me tell you what doesn't seem to matter much for when it comes to belonging. FaceTime with senior leadership that was not personal, that was not authentic. People do not care about it. Being invited to big external events or presentations by the senior leadership team, people are not impressed by that. Or being copied on emails, not impressed by it. People want one-on-one time. They want to know that you are recognizing them, that they matter, and that you're asking the questions and engaging with them in a very authentic way. I have a few slides here about the art of checking in. You can read those on your own. The other thing I'll say is give people a voice who you know are feeling ignored or who you have ignored at work. Bring people in. If you've got someone quiet, right, make people feel like they're included. Create that sense of inclusion and belonging that we all know we need. Don't just leave the lamb out in the field. Bring them in, take care of them, feed your employees, give them what they need to be fruitful and to survive. As I come to an end here, creating a sense of belonging, while we think of them as collective employees, volunteers, retirees, and committee members, we have to remember that we have to make sure that we're seeing people as individuals. As individuals, that is so important. More slides for you to just kind of look through. The one thing I'll tell you is beware of this person, the professional staller. My last gift to you today is don't be that person. If you want to create a sense of belonging, do it now. Make a commitment now to do the things that I just talked about. Be the change maker in your organization. Sometimes it's as simple as grabbing your cup of coffee or tea and walking around the building, not to waste time, but walking around the building and authentically asking people, how are you doing? How's your kids? It starts with that. How can you get started in creating sort of this sense of how you move things forward? That's so important. So don't be a professional staller. The last thing I'll tell you is that one of the things my wife and I are looking to do is to create a movement and change the way that we work. And so on our website, we have free, F-R-E-E, we all like free. We have free, we have a whole page created rather for workplace listening. We have an anonymous global survey that you can take. You can provide your feedback. That'll help us as we continue to engage with companies and hear from folks in the workplace around workplace listening. We also have a white paper around the 10 reasons listening should be a core competency in every workplace. I believe for all of my HR professionals, we should measure it. We know that what gets measured gets done. I think it should be in the performance review. We should measure how we are listening to one another at work, our clients, even our volunteers. And then we also have a workplace listening self-assessment for you to measure sort of where you are. We all have heard of the moody workplace communicator who looks like this and acts like this at work. That is not what we want. We don't want people rolling their eyes either, right? Workplace communication is typically, for all of you know, it's the number one thing that shows up where people are saying, hey, I need more help. Communication is an issue for us. We have people running away from people when they show up, right? That happens at times. And then here's the worker who's trying to get their work done and the boss is micromanaging them. So we are communicating all the time in various ways. And we're sitting in meetings sometimes looking at this when our coworkers are presenting. So we don't want unhappy employees. You have this QR code. You can go to the website. I'm not asking for your email address. I'm not asking for any information. It is totally free. It's just for you. You'll have this in your packet as well. Model the behavior that you want to see and be seen, creating a sense of belonging within your organization and in community. Make the difference. Period. And if I were in front of you, I'd give you all a hug, but I'm not. So now it's our time to join the conversation. Thank you for the opportunity to listen. And hopefully I shared something that was dynamic and good for you. And hopefully you learned something new along the way. So I'll stop sharing. I know that we've got some folks that were in the chat. And let's just start your video.
We had lots of great commentary in the chat throughout the entire session,
Great.
Jake. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So what I would say is, I don't know who wants to, maybe Carol or somebody, if there are certain things that are in the chat and people have questions and they want to get into this dialogue, I think we've got time to do that. So I would say, let's go ahead and use the time wisely. Especially if you see something, Carol, that someone maybe an aha moment or a question that you think would be really good to get us kicked off. I'm now in the chat myself and just kind of looking through some of the comments as well.
Sure. So the question that you raised earlier, what's the quiet thing that needs to be said out loud about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging?
Mm-hmm.
There were several people who made comments in there. I'm just going to read off a few of those. Get
Sure.
comfortable with being uncomfortable. The current national climate is split and anti-DEI. Where is the response? Tokenism isn't diversity. The DEI is good for business.
Mm.
Everyone has to participate in the work. It just can't be a few. There were several people who commented on that. So maybe Jason, how do we help bring people along in the journey?
Yeah, I think one of the first things we have to do is we have to take a look at ourselves. That's the first thing, because we don't want to be performative. Performative is like, oh, we say, oh yeah, that's something that I think our organization needs to do, and we'll implement a strategy. Belonging is about the personal one-on-one relationship. And what's happening is we're leaving ourselves out of that equation. It's not something for your leadership team to do or the diversity committee to do. It is something for all of us to do. So the first thing I think we need to do is, as they would say back in the 80s, we need to check ourselves before we wreck ourselves, because we're doing a lot of wrecking. We need to really look at ourselves and say, how am I showing up at work? How am I showing up as a professional? How am I showing up as a leader? How am I showing up as an example? And what areas do I need to model this behavior more? It doesn't make any sense for you to talk about you want to create a sense of belonging in your workplace and you walk past people each and every day and you don't speak to them. Your leadership is not valid. This is something where you're going to have to look at yourself and say, as a professional, what are those areas that I need to say, you know what, I need to stop doing this. Here's something, maybe some attributes or some professional behaviors that I need to start doing that I have not implemented. And it doesn't matter how young or how old we are. The reality is we all have something that we need to be working on. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we need to be authentic. Just like kids know when they see an adult and they look at them and you say hi to so-and-so, and they look and they like back up, they see something that kids know when a person is not authentic. And I think adults, we know that too. When we start sitting around the boardroom table or in community in meetings, and we start coming up with strategies, and we haven't done what I said we need to do first, but more importantly, it's not authentic, people see right through that. They also see through the fact that when we make these promises at work and we create these wonderful, beautiful 5- and 6-page strategy documents that we don't follow, especially the diversity, equity, and inclusion ones, and we won't even get into, there's the strategy plan and then the promise that the diversity plan is going to be integrated, and it's never integrated, it's never measured. It's like, what do you do with that? I see a number of people like my friend Crystal and others who I know that we know that measuring this is important. So that authenticity is really important. I think if you start with those two things, model the behavior, do the self-assessment for yourself, and then move toward how can I be authentic in my questions and making sure that my team and my colleagues have a sense of belonging, and that happens because of me. I think that's really the first phase of how we really move this work forward.
Thank you for that. I want to give people a chance to unmute. And if there are questions or some commentary, there were so many rich nuggets here in the chat, and I'm happy to read through them, but I'd love an opportunity for folks to engage.
Absolutely. This is called the healthy pause because no one wants to be the first person. And then when the first person talks, everybody will be like, I'm in.
Hello, my name is Makila Thomas. I am
Hi.
with United Ways of California. Thank you so much, Jason, for your expertise and just sharing that with us. So you talked about ways to build a sense of belonging in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
What about a virtual environment? What is your advice for a virtual environment?
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I had a whole page of notes for that, but I remember some of them, and I often have to make sure, as you all know, from when people are working remote, it is critical that we make sure, especially if there's a place where 5 or 6 people are in a room, and then there's 2 or 3 people who are not in the room where they're virtual on their car driving, or maybe virtually like today in front of their computers. The first thing we have to do, it is a must, is we have to acknowledge and include everyone in the conversation. Sometimes as the host or facilitator, we forget that those people are even online. Pay attention to your language. What happens is we're in a room, or maybe we're even in Zoom. We're really focused on 1 or 2 people. Right now, there's 100 plus of you who are 84 of you right now who are online. I can't see all of your faces. Part of what we need to be doing is looking at people's faces. We need to make sure that we are acknowledging the people who are on the call, always when we're asking questions for feedback, referring back to who is on that call. The other thing I think from a virtual perspective is recognition goes a long way in that when you start your virtual call or session, and let's say it's a weekly team meeting, even if you're a volunteer, you're showing up once a month to a board meeting and maybe it's virtual. For the facilitator, for all of you listening, one of the good nuggets you should do is think about who's going to be on that call and what the topic is going to be about. And then for each person, you should be thinking about what is their gift or talent? What is the thing they could bring to this conversation? And when you're starting that call, tell them. So if I'm on here and let's say it's a DEI roundtable call, there's 12 of us on the call. But if the one thing I do really well is listen, then you tell me, hey, Jason, I know that you're on this call for this reason or that reason or your role, but specifically for today, I want you to really be listening to see, are there any gaps in our communication or gaps in our strategies? Maybe for the next person, they're super organized. Tell each person why they're on the call, what the value is that they bring. That's how you recognize people in real time. The other thing I would say in terms of virtual calls is sometimes people aren't paying attention. And so everybody's not, like a masterful facilitator, right? And we all have moments where we do it better than other times. But you've got to find a way to keep people's attention. You really do. So what I think that means is sometimes our virtual sessions are way too long. Sometimes the meeting only needs to be 15 minutes and we schedule an hour and we take an hour and 10 and we're filling up that glass with the ocean and we don't need to. Be very specific in your agenda about what you want to talk about. Make sure the right people are in the room and give people a pass. If they don't need to be in the room, don't waste their time. And specifically what I'll do is I'll add a larger list just because of our time today. I'll add a larger list of those components for virtual sessions. And then I have one specifically for retirees as well. And I'll add that list to the end of this presentation for you all to use as reference. So who else? Other thoughts, other statements, other questions? What do you want to know?
Jason,
Hi, Mary.
hi there. Quick question regarding comment you made about listening.
Mm-hmm.
Could you share some examples of what that measurement might look like?
Sure. And workplace listening?
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things that organizations struggle with is they will say, let's take a customer service, a person who works in customer service. And one of the things they'll say is, you need to make sure that you're increasing your numbers. Well, let's say if they have cold calls, one of the reasons, and we all know this, is that people won't sometimes return a phone call after they've already had one, or they won't show up some places because they did not feel like they were heard. So one of the ways I think that you measure that is when you're having a conversation, when you're having a call, it is actually okay. Or let's say you're working with colleagues, it is okay to say to them in that call, once they've shared what they've shared with you, you should repeat that back to them. You should say, okay, so let me clarify. What I think I heard you say is, and then they'll tell you, yes, you heard me correctly, or no, you did not hear me correctly. And it'll give them the opportunity to sort of self-correct. The other thing is sometimes when we're listening, let's say someone will share something and they'll say, yes, that's exactly what I said. The number one thing we like to do is then solve the problem. We want to jump in and solve the issue. One of the ways you don't have to solve the issue is you say, okay, if I heard you correctly, if there's an issue, you say, well, okay, great. What have you thought about as a way to solve the issue? What thoughts have you put in there? I think it's a great way for leaders to sort of step back and give their teams the opportunity to come with a solution or to have thought about a solution for sure. Mary, specifically, I think if you're looking at looking for like what's the measurement on a performance evaluation, like how do I actually measure listening? Well, one of the things you remember that scary term, the 360-degree feedback. We don't have to buy that and give it to everybody. One of the ways that we do that is we literally get up out of our seats, and if I had a performance evaluation with Mary, I would go around and I would ask clients that maybe are or donors on the United Way perspective. I would go ask donors. I would ask coworkers. I would ask community members. The question is, do you think this person listens to you? Are they delivering on the promise when you're having meetings with them or when you're having fundraising meetings with them? And you will be amazed of the number of people, one, who will say, no, they don't listen. That's why I didn't call back, or that's why I'm not showing up. I think we have to get really practical with this, and we have to ask people. That's one really good way that we measure that. I think when people also know it's on the performance evaluation, at first they're kind of like, what do I need to do? It makes you stand up as a professional. It makes you take really good notes. It makes you turn on all of your verbal and nonverbal cues because you know that this is being measured, that people are paying attention, and it actually grows us a little bit more, and I think in our professionalism. So two different ways. One is the more tangible way of how you measure, but there's also another way to make sure that you are listening and measuring that progress when you're working with clients and individuals, for sure.
Thank you.
There was a question in the chat by Maria. Would you like to unmute and ask your question?
I think I see it. Maria Vasquez.
Hi, yes.
Hi, Maria.
Hi. So yeah, I did have a question. So I know we talked a lot about how as an employer we can meet our employees halfway, as far as like diversity, and talking about subjects around inclusion, but how does it work the other way around?
Yeah, so I think your
Like,
question. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, as an individual in a place that lacks diversity, like how can you effectively bring that to the table, like bring that little baby elephant to the table and say, hey, can you meet me halfway here? I'm just not feeling included or welcomed, or
Right.
what are
Yeah.
some strategies for that?
Yeah, this is a really good question. And I think one of the things that comes to mind is I just did a training last week, and someone said it was a white female who said that she worked for a predominantly African American led and employee populated organization. And she said, I learned a lot in the process of that. I will tell you that sometimes for women, for African Americans, for people of color, I go to meetings all the time and I'm the only one in the room. I'm the only one who looks like me in the room, And sometimes I wonder, I'm sure some other brown people got invited to this meeting and there's 100 people in the room and I'm the only one here. I see people kind of laughing and chuckling, but it happens often. I think when there's two things. When you are interviewing to go work for an organization, you should ask them to pull their diversity numbers for you. They're just EEOC numbers. Every HR department has it. You should ask and say, I'd love, especially if it's a big organization, maybe even a smaller one, 25 to 50 people or 100, you should ask, like, I'd love to, what are your diversity numbers? How many people do you have, people of color? Do you have people at work who maybe you've surveyed and who will let folks know, like, I'm LGBTQ, or maybe they've self-disclosed that in some way, shape, or form, or they have affinity groups in that area. I think when you're interviewing for an organization, it should not be a surprise when you show up to an organization that it is not as diverse as you would like it to be. I think when you show up, or if you're in an organization over time and you're starting to see there's not a lot of change here in terms of women in leadership or whatever, I think you have to ask the question. And I don't think it's an HR question. I think it's a question that part of our work in the area of allyship is bringing it to the forefront and just asking the question. Now you might have to ask your boss, where's the best way to ask this question? But I do think, hey, if you're at the table, just ask your boss, say, hey, I'm starting to see that, we're not hiring people of color. Why is that? Or I'm noticing that we're not hiring women, or why don't we have more, diverse representation in this particular area? When you ask the question, light bulbs go off, bells start to ring, and people, they have to answer the question. And I think part of it is like, what is the strategy for that? And there are many organizations who will have sometimes, to be honest, excuses for it. We haven't been able to find people of color. We haven't been able to find people who are educated enough in this area or that area. But what it does is it starts the conversation. So many people are frustrated and they're not saying anything. So I think part of the strategy is you have to bring it up. The other thing is, when you bring it up, I am really big on coming to the table with solutions. So if you're going to bring it up, come to the table with, well, here's what I'm seeing as an employee. Here's what I'm seeing as the person who works here, or I'm out in community. And I think this is one way that we could look at how we maybe solve this issue. Sometimes it is an issue that's maybe on HR's radar screen or your boss's radar screen, and they just don't know what to do, or they need some help. And so maybe you could be that person to provide that extra level of support, or maybe someone that you can help bring in to the organization to help in that area. But I think at the end of the day, I tell people, you gotta ask the question. You gotta just raise your hand and say, hey, pause. I'm starting to see this trend here. And I think it should look or reflect and be different than what I'm experiencing.
Thank you for that. That was great. That was a great answer. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me know that it was great, because sometimes you answer a question and you're like, I hope that was okay. So I appreciate that.
I think we have time for one more question.
Sure. Who's going to be the bold soul?
Be the bold soul, Jason.
Okay.
I don't think we've ever had this conversation, but in my work at Worldwide over the last 7 years, rural America, small United Ways, those one county shops
Mm-hmm.
in, Southern Illinois or, middle of South Dakota or North Dakota, they live in a different world, unfortunately,
Right.
than a lot of our big markets. And so this idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging is something that many of those leaders feel like they can't even bring up because their community is so different. And so I wonder, how would you help smaller, more rural United Ways who are really on the other side of the red-blue line in terms of navigating this? Because they really are alone, and they feel like this is a really difficult thing for them to take on. And oftentimes I would just remind them, do what you've always been doing. You've included everybody and everything all along. Don't get hung up on the language. But then sometimes I feel like that's a cop-out, because sometimes that language is important.
Right, right. That's a really good question. I- We get the opportunity to work with really small organizations sometimes where they butt up right against like an Amish community. And I think part of it is, let's deal with the data. So if we're doing work in with an organization that is in a rural community and everyone that works there is white, diversity comes in different spaces. That's why I think the belonging aspect of this work is so important. If we create that sense of belonging first, that is the thing internally that helps to drive that sort of impact, to be aware, self-aware. During George Floyd, people were reading books and learning about fragility and all types of stuff, right? And now all of a sudden it feels like we're not doing that anymore. And I think those are the types of conversations that organizations, especially in rural communities, need to have. But you first need to be honest that the people coming through this bank, there's no one brown coming through here, And so I think we need to know what the data is, know the populations that we're serving. And just like anyone else, I think we also need to be ready for, let's say, a community grows over time or it does whatever. I think we need to be open, but creating that inclusiveness to the work. If someone walks through the door that does not look like you, are you ready to receive them, to provide the same level of customer service along the way? It is only when those conversations happen in the workplace. Oftentimes I have to start my leadership trainings and allyship with, I'm not here to beat up white males, because sometimes they feel like I'm being forced to come to the table to learn about something that either I don't want to learn about, or we don't serve those people anyway. But if you get a promotion and end up moving to a bigger market, guess what? You're still an extension of that organization. So know who your clients are. I think you need to be real about who you're serving. I don't think it's a problem if you're in a rural community and you're not serving anyone else that may look like you, but you should still be culturally aware and culturally sensitive. That to me is also a part of just being a really good professional. But just like I have to go into environments all the time with people, rooms full of people who don't look like me, and sometimes they're trying to find a way to relate. I think in the workplace we should have that same level of expectation for our employees, because we have an employee handbook. Diversity is somewhere showing up in there, and the question is, how are we leveraging it? Last thing, Bill, is diversity shows up in different ways. So the way I would challenge people sometimes is they'll want to talk about race. That's where we go first, and I'll say, well, look at your board. It's all white men, or it's all white people, or it's all whatever, right? I go to organizations that are African American, and I will say to them, I get it. African American led, you're serving African American populations. You don't have any people who don't look like you on your board represented. So it's about representation at that point. Where are your women? Where are maybe Latino women, Asian Pacific Islanders? Where's your LGBTQ person who's coming in? And once you can recruit them, they'll be able to look at your organization and tell you the truth about whether or not they fit in or they belong. So that's just a few of my thoughts there around that.
Thank you, Jason. Go ahead, Bill. I was going to ask you if you'd like to wrap it
Okay.
up today.
Yes, definitely. Again, thank you so much. A big, warm appreciation to Jason for really helping us with practices to enhance our professional growth around the area of belonging. As Jason cited, research findings really suggest that improvement in belonging really can enhance overall effectiveness of an organization to achieve its mission-focused work. Now, let me pause and say, we probably would take a long window break before we present another program, which will be November. In discussing about when we will present, we decided that because of summer vacations and because of the uptick in terms of just overall activities in United Ways across the country, et cetera, that we would focus on a program at some point in November. We haven't pinned down the date yet, but you will hear about that later. But I can tell you, though, is that we've identified through the help of Charmaine Brown, who is our VP and Chief Diversity Inclusion Officer at United Way Worldwide, several United Ways that have really moved the needle somewhat in this space of diversity. And our program will focus on hearing from them about the things that they have done specifically to move the needle. Included in that list of United Ways, we have the United Way in Baltimore, the United Way in Detroit. I believe it's Fort Wharton Beach, Florida, Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota, who we hope will participate and help us to understand very specific strategies that they have taken to enhance diversity in their respective United Ways. Co-hosting that event in November will be Mark Levy, and Mark is retired President and CEO of Fort Wayne, Indiana, and also Carol Berger, who retired from being the President and CEO in Jackson, Mississippi. They will both lead that group, or not so much lead, but host that group together and lift up, and we will feature those United Ways I mentioned who have made considerable progress in the diversity space. I see we are a little over our time, but in closing this roundtable, I would like to thank each of you again for your participation, and we would like a little feedback. Don't quite sign off yet. It may take 2 or 3 minutes for you to just pop your answers in a survey that Caitlin is going to put up before you leave this roundtable. Once you've finished, we will bid you adieu, and we hope that you have a very successful rest of your week. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining, everybody. Once you leave, a survey will pop up.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Jason Daniels. You did an
Absolutely.
outstanding job. So grateful for your time today and your expertise in this area.